So I'm going to let Soph introduce this one because I feel like she's been on the edge of her seat to try and get Allegra in here. Like, honestly, she's so excited. I've never seen her so pumped on a podcast guest. So
I just love her.
Yeah.
Her name's Allegra Bambi Haines, and I met her here over in London, but I'm not going to spend much time introducing her. This entire conversation was eye-opening, hilarious, really, would you say intense at times?
intense. Yeah, definitely.
It was Trans Awareness Week last week in the UK, and we wanted to highlight and amplify a voice that we both love, who has an incredible story, is hugely successful from a career and money perspective, but just has such a great sense of humour and was open talking about her journey transitioning. So without further ado, Allegra Bambi Haines. Allegra,
hi.
I'm so excited that you're in studio with us.
I reckon Soph has been like,
I think
so
you're my
excited
most. Well, do you know what it is? So I first met Allegra. We were working, so we have a shared working space, which now Vic's come and joined the crew. You know, she was, poor old thing, was stuck in New Zealand for a while.
I'm like, who are these friends that you're making? I'm just working at home.
She's like, I'm not jealous. I'm not at all. But, like,
But
shut
we've
the
got
fuck
work to
up.
do,
Yeah.
Sophie, so stop hanging out with your friends.
No, so we met last year, not for long, like when I spent like 3 months over here. And it's one of those workplaces
Did you meet like in the lunchroom when you were like, what are you having for lunch?
I think I
Like, your
forced
normal-
myself on her.
Yeah,
You know? I was very much
quite.
like, hi, I like your outfit.
It's not.
Yeah.
Can we talk?
unusual.
There was a restraining order on my. on my
Allegra's like trying to get
I
away.
was like Googling how do you get a restraining order quickly.
How do I change office locations?
Yeah. What's my contract say? Get me out.
It's one of those workplaces, there's so many interesting people, like cool outfits, cool people. Everyone's doing such interesting stuff. But I feel like within the first 10 minutes, I was like, I want to be friends with you, you, and you.
Soph sat down the other day. She's like, gosh, there's just so many hot guys here.
Do you
And I was
think?
like,
Yeah, do you not reckon?
oh, totally. There is.
Co-working spaces is slightly triggering for anyone that didn't enjoy high school because it's kind of exactly the same.
Do you
I
think?
agree.
Babe,
yeah.
you all meet in the canteen at lunchtime. You all do the awkward flirting where it's a bit like, and
you're-
across, you know, you're just having slightly nicer lunches.
And you all sit at the same
Totally.
positions.
You're at the
Oh my
desks
God, I
and
didn't
it's
think
just,
of this.
there's just no teachers.
Yeah.
Which is why, which
People
is
have
what I
sex in the
love.
bathrooms.
Yeah. Well, not me. Thank you. Although I have drilled a hole so I can spy. No, but it's like school. It really is like school. And with that comes you gravitate towards certain groups.
Oh my God,
true.
it's so true. And I've never thought of that. It is quite distracting, I must say. Today I faced away from everyone and the work that I got done, I tell you what, that's probably why my parents sent me to an all-girls school.
Yeah.
Which now feels so archaic. The thought of separating genders is bizarre.
I don't know if that's a healthy thing to do. My parents would give me an egg cup of wine when I was 11 to be part of the family enjoyment of food and sat around the table and not feeling left out. And I think it gave me a really healthy attitude to alcohol.
Yeah.
If you
Rather than hitting 18 and being like, woohoo.
completely,
like,
completely, and not having that kind of, it's the devil, it's this, it's that.
Like with anything, like with chocolate, if you're like, no, you can't have it, and then you're allowed it, you go a hundy.
What is a bit like going to an all-girls school, going hundy on men.
No, but it is. I think with school, even I noticed that my friends who went to co-ed schools would come out just like having these very normal conversations with the opposite sex, and I would be like quite nervous and weird. Still am a bit.
I was going to say, does that stay with you?
Yeah, I mean, you've seen it in action. I'm very much struggle. I really struggle with the whole like friendship flirting line because I think I just sort of flirt with everyone, but then I also friend zone everyone. It's quite strange.
You've got to be selective with who you flirt with. Save your flirting. Save your like maximum flirting for the people that you actually really.
That's such a good piece of advice.
Yeah, because you can be, I'm naturally like a really flirty person. I get it from my mum. She's also the same. Like friendliness kind of borders with flirtiness. And I think that it's a really lovely quality to have. But you're right. How do you differentiate between flirting with somebody who you don't fancy to flirting with someone who you do fancy? And I think it's a skill.
Can we wind things back? Because for a lot of people listening, they won't know, whoop, slip in a nip. And actually, ironically, I had no idea that Allegra was transgender. Like, I had no idea when we met. And it was quite funny because one of the first times, actually it wasn't the first times, but since I got back to the UK, we were in an elevator together and you were joking about how there were so many people in there and it was just as tight as your vagina. And I was like, ha ha ha.
I think that was like the second time I met you and I was like, this girl is wild.
Yeah.
And also I was like so awkward in that elevator and I was like, oh my God, get me out of here, get me out of here.
At what point did you not realize, because I'm assuming that you already, like the sex that you were assigned at birth was not how it should have been. At what age did you come to kind of cognitively realize that you weren't in the body that matched how you feel?
It was so, I'm 42. So life back then for somebody who was, let's say, 8 years old is very different to an 8-year-old now. I also grew up in South Wales countryside, which was beautifully idyllic in so many ways, but completely not exposed to real life, which I think is like, I can only look back and think that is kind of a good thing, right? But in terms of if I was 8, so it was 8 years old. If I was 8 years old nowadays living in a city, my parents would probably be, I don't know, Googling how I could progress in my journey if that's what I wanted to do. But 8-year-old me in South Wales, around that time, you know, the cliches of hanging around with girls, the cliches of not wanting to do male sports, the kind of cliches of being quite shy and introverted were all absolutely true. So when I kind of like hear them, I'm like, no, like these are the things that's how I was. It took me years to even understand or know what a trans person was. And when I say years, I mean like 21.
Does that mean that you got to 21 and finally understood there was other people who felt like you did?
Not as positive as that.
Right.
Yeah. Not, because again, it just wasn't a spoken about thing in the media like it is nowadays.
Was it more society kind of catching up with what you were going through?
Well, remember at the time, I remember I was at high school when Caitlyn Jenner came out as a transgender woman, and I think she was the first representation that I'd seen in mainstream media as someone that had come from also a really like sheltered, not particularly diverse upbringing. And I hadn't ever seen or heard of that before. You know, so I can't imagine growing up in a space where there's zero representation, not only in your actual physical space, but in media and magazines and books and any kind of.
There was nothing. And actually weirdly, like back then, the only representation in the media was ridicule. It was the wording was like, I mean, I don't know this for a fact, but I'm sure that the most horrendous word, which is a huge cuss to anyone who is trans, the word tranny is disgusting. That would have 100% would have been used in the newspapers. And actually, what's funny is that, not funny, but what's very odd is in the last 3 years, that kind of ridicule is coming back into the press. Actually, had a therapy session today, and he specializes in clients who are part of like the rainbow community. He's such an amazing guy, and he was saying that in a very long time, he has to digest the news, what's going on, the trans hate, but he is just so blown away with anger about it. He's a gay guy. And he said to me, he was like, I've not seen it this bad for years and years and years. And that reminded me and took me back to university when I was gay for 5 years, which was, I wasn't comfortable with, but I pretended to be comfortable with because that's the box that I fitted in.
Well, I guess it was the only box that you could see that was sort of
the
better
only
than
box.
how you felt being the idea of being straight.
Yeah. And then I saw a really negative TV show, like a Jerry Springer style show where the guest was trans and the audience were like baying that person. It was like circus style, like they were in the middle of the ring and the audience. But with that came a lot of the things that trans woman is saying.
Did you have penny drop moments where you were like,
a horrendous penny drop moment.
Like a light bulb.
And it was a traumatic penny drop moment because that feeling of fight or flight, you know, that feeling where your blood runs cold.
Oh,
and I get it
the worst feeling
all the time. And I'm deep down believe my anxiety comes from that 3-minute segment on television. Because I remember sitting in my room thinking, holy F, this is me. And look at how people are reacting to this person. And my life changed from then. That's the truth of it. It wasn't like a kind of, oh my goodness, that's who I am. And now life's going to be amazing. It was a very much from that moment on, for a good 6 years, it was a very mentally downward spiral, while also trying to work, while also trying to live a life, while also trying to sleep well at night, while also trying to, I don't know, manage an eating disorder that developed through the stress of this, I think, and also through, I've got to be skinny if I'm going to be female, you know, all of these things. Also, not having therapy for it, going to the doctor, being prescribed anti-anxiety medication. It was honestly hell.
It's really hard, and I'm sure it gets probably frustrating because you can explain it. You can't empathize unless you've been through that. And I don't know, it must be kind of frustrating to have so many friends in so many different facets of life that will never truly understand what that struggle has been to come to a place where you're like, this is who I am. And holy shit, it has been such an uphill battle to get there. Like, we take for granted how easily we fit into the boxes and how damaging it is to not have that representation in all areas of everybody, any human that exists.
It's so intriguing as well, because you seem so confident, and you know, you give off such positive energy. Now to have known that you've gone through that is really
it's heartbreaking. It makes my whole body like,
I think that when you've been to the depths of your life and you have that moment, I don't know if you've ever had this before. It took me a long time to try and describe this in therapy when I first started, but that moment where you're pulled out of your physical body and you're looking back on your physical body and you just think, this is me. What's happening? What's going on? It's such a weird feeling.
It's almost disassociation. I've had out of body.
It's out of body, and it always used to happen when I was in bed at nighttime. Sleep has always been such a thing for me. Now I sleep well, which correlates with happiness in my life. Between the ages of 21 and 25 or 26, I told no one.
So you found out, did you say at 21?
21.
That was when you watched that
light bulb moment. So for the preceding 4 or 5 years after that, I didn't tell anyone. I didn't seek any help. It sat in my body. I feel like that knot of anxiety I had for 6 years, and it just got tighter and tighter and tighter until it was make or break.
Who was the first person that you
My
told?
mum.
And how was their reaction and their family and friends?
Amazing.
I've actually met your mum very briefly. She was such a lovely human. I mean, I just think, you know, to get to the point where you feel comfortable even saying the words out loud, to think that there's people who are met with not that reaction, you just can't imagine.
I just can't fathom. It's very easy for me to say as somebody who is a trans female. However, I think we need to be very clear on something. Just because you're from a minority does not make you an amazing person. It doesn't make you somebody who is, you know, very open-minded, because often minority fights against a minority, right? So it would be very easy for me to sit here and say, as a parent, I would never neglect my child in a way that I would turn against them for being who they want to be and being open and honest about that. But that's the parent I would be. I cannot fathom any parent that would not allow their child to be who they would want to be. For me, it's emotional abuse. It is emotional abuse. And that person should probably never have kids in the first place. So I think first and foremost, it was just like an explanation to her of my feelings. That was actually a really beautiful moment, because for me, it always reminds me of going for dinner and having a glass of red wine, and just chatting things through, like almost opening this 5 years worth of feelings out. And also I was not eating properly. It was a bit of a mess.
Well, you've been so unhappy.
It was just unhappiness. It was a weird ritual for me. For me, it was bulimia. So it was a very weird ritual it was almost a bit like, I've eaten my main, now here's my dessert, which was actually just throwing up. And for me, it was controlled. But also, I think for me, it was a bit more like, I've got nothing really to live for. I don't know what's going on with me. So why not just make my life even more shit?
So it was more self-sabotage more than anything.
100%. Yeah.
And so do you think that moment where you could sit down with your mum and almost probably for the first time as well express in words what's taken 6 years to understand yourself, this is how I'm feeling. And I imagine that would have been really cathartic to be able to talk her through from the beginning. This is actually what it feels like for me.
And did it bring you two closer in terms of like you both were trying to understand what was going on, or she was trying to understand what was going on?
Yeah, I think 100%. And I think it was cathartic to go through it. Maybe not so much at the time, but looking back now, I was very mindful that my mum had, well, definitely even less of an idea of what this was. But she took it in such an incredible way, in such a wise way, almost like she knew everything about it. She almost became like my partner in crime when it came to how I was feeling at that stage. I wasn't ready to tell anyone else. I just wasn't ready. And I think like, it's that thing of when eventually I did start telling other people, why didn't you tell me earlier? Why wasn't I part of this? And I'm like, this had absolutely nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
And I have to go through this in the way that I go through it because these are my feelings. This is my body and it's been my suffering. So now my healing is me. And I think that the one thing I would say being trans does is, for me, it has made me the strongest person I've ever met in my entire life. I really do mean that. I look back now as an adult at what the suffering, just everything that a trans woman in my case has to go through. And hats off to the community because it's a lot. It's an ongoing project. It's like buying a house that you're constantly doing up. And
the renovation that never ends.
The renovation that never ends. And you're sleeping in those dusty bedrooms. You haven't got a bathroom. The kitchen's just, all of these things.
That's actually such a good analogy.
Yeah, really good analogy.
I think through therapy, I always use a house in almost every analogy I do. And the other one is on the subject of kind of like other people. It's like, this is the house that I have built. If I want you to come into that house, I'll answer the door and I'll let you in.
I'll show you my rooms.
Yeah.
I love that.
But also when it comes to like guys, it's like, I haven't had like a huge amount of boyfriends. I've had boyfriends, but I think one of the main things is, okay, the house I've built is almost finished and it's amazing. I've spent a fortune on it. I've got a new sofa, like don't spill red wine on it. Don't ruin my house. Because if you begin to start ruining my house, I'll ask you to leave.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like this.
I love this analogy.
Yeah. Well, you'd be incredibly protective of that house.
Yeah.
The insurance that you've put on that house is hefty.
Yeah. But you have to make sure you don't lock the door.
Yeah.
Because then the last thing I would ever want to be, and I'm definitely not, is kind of someone who is cold due to suffering.
Well, I think you're literally the opposite.
You're
of that,
very
just
much
so
the
you
opposite.
know.
Yeah.
Oh.
I was just wanting to know, so once you made the decision to transition, what is the cost that's involved and what is the process? Does it start with hormone therapy? Once, I guess, even making that decision and then the cost involved in that, I'm keen to know. Yeah.
It's really hard to navigate for people.
Yeah.
Because there are two paths that you go down. The NHS, which
is the National Health Service.
The National Health Service in the UK, which, just Google it. Google NHS and trans and you will see the articles. The waiting lists. Very sadly, a trans person killed themselves, I think it was about 4 days ago, because depression linked, the mum thinks, to the wait that's always involved. The way that often the NHS aren't that empathetic with people. That's from my experience. I want to really make sure that I say that. That's my experience. I went down the NHS route, but very quickly came off it.
It was just too long?
It was too long. I missed an appointment because I was at work and nobody knew. I was very junior. I had this kind of like anxiety of like never leaving before anyone else because what would people think? Like, if I say I'm going to a doctor's appointment, they're not going to believe me. I was working on a TV show at the time and it was like a crucial stage of filming. So I missed my appointment because I didn't have the guts to say, I have a really important appointment. Because I missed one appointment, they struck me off.
So you go to the bottom of the list, essentially.
Yeah.
And what was that initial weight? Was
do you know what? Back then, so that would have been like when I was 26, which is 16 years ago. I think it was like 4 or 5 months.
Yeah, wow.
It was quite a long time.
And is that just to have an appointment to start the process?
Yeah.
It's not even...
Yeah. So I was distraught because I just thought that was my kind of lifeline. I then looked into ways to go private. I haven't accepted money from my parents since my dad gave me 300 quid on my first day at university. It was never an option to turn to my parents because then they didn't know. Well, my mum knew, but the rest of my family didn't. So I started looking into it. I have worked between leaving uni, moving to London to that point, really hard. I had 2 jobs. I worked in television. I also worked in a bar Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So I was working full, like a lot. So going private is absolutely a privilege, but it's a privilege that I worked really hard for.
Yeah.
Like I scrimped and saved. So I actually went down the private route. And the first instance was to see an endocrinologist, see a psych, other way around. I can't remember who I saw first. And then to obtain the hormones that I'd been waiting for.
And was your motivation to work that hard because you were specifically wanting to spend your money on this, or has that always been a part of who you are as a worker? And
my parents are amazing. My dad's an entrepreneur. It was always the case of get a job. My first job, probably when I was about 14, working on a farm.
What were you doing?
Like potato picking. Then I got a job in the local shop and I just loved having my own money.
I was the same. I was like itching to have my own job so that I could have my own spending money.
It was quite good where I grew up actually because it's quite an affluent area. Everyone does pretty well. The school I went to, again, it's a very affluent school. But where I grew up, there was this kind of like down to earth, incredible work ethic. It wasn't just like loads of kids driving around in sports cars that their parents had bought them. It was like and even to this day now, like people I went to school with have set up like shops and restaurants and, like there's this real, and I don't know what that is. I've never actually really thought about that before until now. But I always remember wherever I worked in a hotel, waiting tables. I always remember just getting that brown paper mini envelope with the cash in it. It would be like 100 quid, 150 quid. I'm like, yes.
This is mine.
This is mine. And like, I can do whatever I want with it. And that's obviously super empowering. That's definitely translated into adult life. Having that work ethic definitely is the reason why I set my own business up. Because I think when you understand the value of money, then you think to yourself, well, why am I earning it for other people? Because I know the value of money. So I think in answer to your question, no, I wasn't saving for a transition, but I think the one blessing in life that I had was that I managed to be able to save to transition.
Would you have had an idea at that point as to what you needed to save for and what that looked like from a timeline perspective?
Yeah, like had you done research in terms of this is how much it costs, this is how much you need to save, or was it kind of just pay as you go?
I think if I'd done a spreadsheet with a breakdown of how much it was going to cost, I would have probably scared myself to the point of it's almost like buying another house. So
had you bought a house at 26?
No.
Oh, okay. Sorry. When you said another house, I was like, what do you mean?
Oh no, I bought a house now, but this is like pulling it back to that analogy of like buying, keep up, babe.
Sorry.
Oh, Christ.
I'm trying.
Good. So if I'd done a spreadsheet with all the kind of costs laid out, I would have shut the laptop and gone, I don't know if I want to do this, or I don't know if I can do this. But the costs involved, private prescription hormones, probably about 100 quid a month. But the private guy that I used to go and see would almost make me buy in bulk. So that would be £1,000. This was when I was young, right? And I was working a job and working hard, but it wasn't like, oh yeah, no worries. It was like the sweats of, oh, wow. And then obviously everyone is very different. Hormones do adapt your body in different ways. Some people grow breasts. I'm talking obviously from a trans female perspective here. Some people grow small breasts, big breasts, like cis women. Everyone's body shape is different. Then obviously if you want to go down the surgical route, which 100% I did, because that's what I wanted to do, there's the cost of everything involved in that. You know, breast augmentation is sort of $7,000. And
was there ever a point where you were like, oh gosh, I can't afford this or I can't do this? Or was it, you know, always the motivation of I will find a way?
I didn't have that mentality.
Yeah.
And that could possibly sound, again, privileged. I really don't want to, but I just don't want to.
I actually disagree. I think that if there's something that you want badly enough, we all know how capable we are. And you would have you didn't need any more drive. Like that was, you know, enough to be like, right, how can I make this happen? Not can I?
It was all very subconscious though. Like it wasn't this kind of like thing that like a lot of people do now, write things down, you know, believe, achieve and all. It wasn't that. It was manifestation has been, if you want to meet someone who can manifest something, meet a trans male or trans female.
So true.
Because when I was 11, walking down the cliff path with my dog, thinking I want to be Kate Moss. I want to walk like her. I want to talk like her. I want to look like her.
This is at 11.
Yeah.
It's really cool to hear.
By the way, I didn't get what I wanted, but I got a version.
I disagree.
I got a version of what I wanted.
And I guess, was that kind of like a slow process in terms of building different rooms in the house? Did you go for like the essentials and we get the kitchen in, or like?
I chose the wrong wallpaper in a few rooms. I had to redecorate a couple of times. My lips.
It must have cost a bit.
My lips were huge. My face looked almost painful with the amount of injectables that I had done. There's certain tweaks that I've had done on my face for sure. I had to really go through some stages. And because I only took my first hormone on my 30th birthday, which is very sweet. My friend put it on for me. We're still like really close friends today.
Sorry.
No, it's a gel.
Oh.
So you rub it on your thigh or your arm.
Oh.
And he did it for me and it's cute. Yeah, it's amazing.
It's really non-invasive either.
You can get the injection, but I think that different people have different preferences. I certainly put it on. I was like, this is definitely not working. I haven't got any boobs. And my friend was like, it's day 2.
Put it all over me.
Yeah. I kind of like put the plug in the bath and poured all of the gel in and just like lay there for hours.
Doctor, I need some more. I need some more. Here's another 1,000 quid.
I had like estrogen on toast and it just did not work. But when you start your estrogen journey, you go through puberty. So I'm sure you ladies, when you went through your puberty, you probably made bad choices when it comes to, let's say, hairstyles or, you know, or like
my makeup at the time.
Like using concealer as lipstick, thinking that looked great. You know, and
actually,
like
my sister's like, why are you wearing foundation on your lips? I'm like, it's my lipstick.
Yeah. And like really spidery eyelashes and like, but so I went through that just at a later in life. And I also experimented with clothes, like they got tighter, my boobs got bigger, and I kind of loved it. I was a very kind of like embracing my shape. It was very much like kind of tight bodies with like mesh at the front that kind of like showed off the cleavage, and you know, high-waisted tight jeans and like heel boots. Like I was like, come on. And like, you know what, I look back and I do not regret a thing. But I think as you get older, as I've got older, I've just pared back a bit. And just what makes me feel comfortable now is not that.
It was probably really nice to lean into the feeling of that femininity and wearing big boots and wearing low tops, you know, and to be able to really own it. And I think, and it's really interesting you bring up the puberty phase, because just watching Sex Education, Cal is transitioning in the show, and
male to female, female to male,
female to male,
right? And
he's ejaculating and having all these orgasms at random times of the day, and he goes to have this, sex therapy session and says, I just don't know what's wrong with me. I'm just so horny. And for some reason, I can't remember the main character's name, which is not great. But he basically says, you're going through puberty.
Yeah.
Give yourself a bit of, it was also really cool to see that in a show that, 13-year-olds are going to be watching.
Yeah, well, it's giving sex education.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
That is like, oh, wow, that's how I might feel. It's like navigating something with help is obviously so much easier than navigating yourself.
But even if I think about, our sex education was lacking. So if ours was lacking and that was what was like mainstream sex education, you think how far that has got to go before, because also I want to know what's happening for all bodies and I don't even really know what's happening with my own. So you kind of can't understand the landscape unless you're taught not just what's happening within your body, but also to those around you. And I think that it's an education piece for everybody that needs to be better. In terms of the financial implications, sorry to just really hammer home on the money side of things, but obviously
that's what it's about.
Financial education podcast. Yeah.
Did it put you in a position where, if you're heading towards 30, I'm thinking about myself, I'm really starting to think about things like, do I want to buy a house? What do I want in 20 years? What do I how do I want to spend my money consciously? I think you get to an age where you've worked enough and you're like, oh God, I'm actually just like throwing money away at this point. I've really got to just get my ducks back in a row. So to be spending all that money at that age on not necessarily your pension or saving for a house deposit or,
the things that society says that you should be spending your money on at that age. Yeah.
How did you get to a place where, because you're incredibly successful and not just financially, but how did you kind of get to a point where you're like, okay, I feel like I've spent the money that I want to feel like myself. And now I can start to think about how I want to build my life around that, because you would have spent can't even imagine how much on operations.
Can you quantify how much you think that you've spent over the years?
Even ballpark.
A vagina's £15,000.
Gosh.
In the UK, which I thought, well, that or a car.
Surely the vagina.
100%. Put it this way, I had to get a cab here.
Now I Uber everywhere.
Yeah, no, totally. Who needs a car? Yeah. I think probably within the realms, definitely of 75 grand.
That's pounds. That's crazy.
£75,000.
Yeah.
So
because it's not just the specialist appointments. It's the therapists afterwards. It's the it's not just the surgeries. So it's all the aftercare, the before care, like everything.
I still see a therapist now. So I've had my therapist now for 7 years. I see him every week. It's 100 quid a week.
Yeah.
And that is essential.
It's essential for everyone.
100%.
It's essential for me. I don't just talk about my gender. I talk about the business that I own. I talk about my
relationships,
family relationships, my what I want from love. He's a friend who I know nothing about.
I mean, if I right now could afford therapy, in fact, I would say it's up there with one of the next things I would like to spend money on regularly, because I like to think of therapy as it's upkeep. It's I'm cleaning out the things that need to be dealt with as they go, rather than waiting till I get to 50 and being like, midlife.
It's like a personal trainer for your emotions, mental health, rather than
100%.
I think everyone should look at their brain essentially as a muscle. You need to keep it going. You need to work it out. And it's funny actually, because this happens in so many ways when it comes to finances with people, priorities. So a therapist, you can go through the NHS for a therapist. A lot of therapists have grants where they can give you a slightly cheaper rate because they've got funding from someone. That's how I started with mine. But often therapy is put second to nights out, Botox, and gym memberships.
Guilty.
And listen, I only got a therapist 7 years ago, so I was 35. So I went for a long time without doing it because...
Oh, really? You didn't have therapy at all through that process?
No.
Holy shit. How did you process all of that?
My friend...
the one that rubbed it on?
No, different friend. My friend does birth charts. And she said, oh my goodness, I've never done your birth chart before. Let's do it. And she literally messaged me and she went, fucking hell, you're a triple Cancer. And I was like, what does that mean? Because I'm not one of these people that knows. Like, I'm not going to be like, oh my God, you're a Sag. That must mean we're really going to be good friends. Like, I haven't got a clue.
No, neither. People that do, I'm like, wow.
I haven't got a clue. But she was like, you're a triple Cancer. How do you deal with the emotions inside your head?
Well, because you're a crab. You stay inside your shell. That's essentially.
What's a triple Cancer? And you just
you have like your star sign, then rising and falling. Yeah, I think not having therapy for a long time probably accentuated my triple Cancer mind. Yeah.
Man.
But in answer to your question, going back to property and, society's...
Redirecting your resource.
I knew you were going to ask this question and I kind of thought about it in the car on the way here. And I think I definitely knew that the money that I was spending could have been used for things like a deposit for a house. And actually £75,000 back then would have got me a nice house. Not so much now in London because it's so expensive.
I think your metaphorical house has been a much better investment.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I really, this is great timing, the podcast today, because I had therapy today, so I feel very therapized. But I do feel like I do not regret anything in life. Honestly, I never look back and think, oh, I could have used that 75 grand to buy a Range Rover, or I could have used that 75 grand to buy a house. I just do not regret things like that. So my mindset is not that. Also, when it comes to the societal pressure of you should be buying a house now, it's like,
hate it. Yeah.
Society didn't work in my favor back then as to help me dictate as to who I was. So I don't really need the societal pressure of you should be buying a house.
Yeah.
Because to me, that was just bullshit. And then I went straight into setting up a business, which, as you ladies know, means it's really hard to save.
Yeah.
You don't really pay yourself very much for a long time.
Do you know my favorite thing? I love this. When you're out for dinner with a friend who works for someone, great. Often, I definitely go through stages of, why am I just not employed?
No.
Why am I just not employed? But I love it when a friend goes, the bill comes. Oh, you can put this through your business, can't you?
Classic.
I'm like
it's like some magical disappearing act that you don't have to pay for or something. It's so, yeah.
Can you buy me a laptop through your business? Because can't you claim it back?
Isn't that better? Because then you pay less tax. So you just buy all my stuff. And
to be honest, I would have been one of those people, I imagine. No idea how it works. Can anyone buy me a laptop? A mouse? A keypad? Anything?
Just put it through your business. But then then the business started, and I think then it was like, I think the thing with me is, will I ever feel complete? Does one in life ever feel complete?
I mean, human nature to chase peace and contentment is the goal, right? Like that is, I hope that's what I want. I want to feel content and happy with my life. Yeah. But we are constantly surrounded with not enoughness. But then I guess if you were to step back and you look at 21-year-old you and how far you've come in terms of that completeness, do you not feel like a completely different human?
I feel like now I'm the mum to that 21-year-old. I feel like I'm obviously a very different person physically. My insides, my soul, my heart, my brain are now aligned. I am the same person though. And funnily enough, when I was trying to reassure people, which wasn't really my job to do, and I really don't even like that word when it comes to being a trans woman, it's like, why should I reassure you things are going to be okay? You should be reassuring me that I'm going to be okay.
Hold on. Are people saying this to you?
I would have to, in my coming out process, I would have to reassure people. But I'm still going to be the same person, but things aren't going to change. It's very common, and all of a sudden the transition becomes about someone else and not you.
Oh, that's so hard. It's like trying to grow within the confines of what someone else is telling you can be.
Well, you're like, I'm trying to get through this too. It's like, you're the least of my worries.
Yeah, exactly. And you do have, I did have empathy for people around me because obviously they're dealing with it as well in their own way. But really it's me. I am given this one life that has been amazing, and I had an amazing childhood, but there's also this kind of like ball of angst that I've been born with. I've been born into the wrong body. The progress is remarkable. And do you know what? I do feel content. I walk my dogs in the morning at like 6:30, 7 o'clock.
What are they called again?
George and Delilah.
So cute.
And I go to the woods near my house, and it's that then I feel content. I think you feel content in moments of solitude.
And nature.
And nature. And 100%. It's a forest and it's beautiful. And I grew up in the countryside, and it's one of the reasons why I bought a house where I've bought, because the forest is on my doorstep.
I find that with the Chiswick Gardens. When I go there and it's just there's birds and streams and trees, and I honestly sometimes feel like I could cry. I'm like, this is just so beautiful.
I actually felt that the other day. I was just like walking through London, and everyone was like walking past, and I felt like a Bridget Jones moment, or like Notting Hill, and I was just like all rugged up and the sun was shining, and I was like, I just love my life.
Oh, that's so good.
And then it snapped out of it, and it was like, back to work, and I was like, oh.
And you have to take those moments and remember those moments.
Yeah.
Those are the things you should be writing down. Not necessarily what you want, but what you have.
Yeah.
We miss all of that because of the pressures of society, because of the pressures of social media, because we're told, write down what you want, believe, achieve, whatever, sleeve. I can't remember the expression. What have we got now? Walking over the bridge, having your Bridget Jones moment as a New Zealand woman in London. Amazing.
I sometimes think when I feel really, really happy, I wish I could bottle this up and have a little sip when I'm feeling down. But when I do feel like that, I often will write down how I'm feeling. And to have that to refer back to is really good, because it's crazy to think the extremities that you can feel in a human body. So much joy and so much despair, and how far away they can feel sometimes. But knowing that it is actually just a part of being human to feel all of those things.
Yeah,
totally.
Two completely different heads on the same human being. And it's like, which head is the universe going to choose for me today? This one. Okay, how do I change to the other head? What do I do? How do I get out of this?
I'm just intrigued to know, what kind of advice would you give, not your younger self, because I hate that phrase, I always get asked, but like in terms of someone who is in a position now that you were going through at 21, from a financial aspect and from a kind of emotional aspect, what kind of advice would you give them?
From a financial aspect, just generally in life, work hard.
Yeah.
Nothing's for free. Probably the only person in the world that agreed with Kim Kardashian when she said people just don't want to work. And I'm probably against everything that you guys believe, what she said, but it's a lot of people don't want to work, but still have an expectation on life. On a more emotional level, use the people in your life because they're there for a reason. Use them as a sounding board. Open up to them, because if they're right in your life, they will not only give you the best advice they can, the biggest heart they can, and if they're not right, then they'll leave.
Oh, I really think there might be a few people after hearing this conversation that want to reach out to you directly. Is that something that you find, is it exhausting, or are you open to people who want to speak to you?
Definitely open for people. I've had in the past, like parents of children who are going through a transition. 100% I'm open to it. Also, I do know an incredible charity that is run by a very dear friend of mine called Not a Phase, which does such amazing things for the trans community. It really is incredible. But yeah, 100%, my heart and my mind is totally open to people. And if I can help in any way, of course, I would have loved to have had someone that at 21, I could have just maybe messaged and said, listen, I need help, because the thoughts that are going through my head right now are that I don't want to be here anymore. Just please, can we meet for a coffee, or please, can we just have a chat? I would have paid all the money in the world for that.
Do you then think, sorry, we've got one really quick game that we'd like to play with you before we finish.
Which kind of seems a bit like disjointed now.
But I just would like to ask for all of those people who are listening who might not know if there's someone in their life that is currently grappling with the same thing that you were at 21. How can we be more inclusive? How can we speak in a way that's going to encourage people to feel like they can talk to us? How can we be better as a society or just individually? What kind of small things would help?
I think I think it's just much better in this circumstance to speak as an individual. I think that really check yourself as a friend, because we all have a lot going on, and some people are definitely more guilty of sucking the air rather than putting the air into the room. And it can be done through habit. It's not necessarily like a malicious thing, but just that old adage of like, I do this with one of my friends. She's got a really bad habit. When I say to her, how are you? She'll be like, how are you?
Oh.
And I'm like,
no, I'm actually genuinely interested in how you are.
Yeah, I've asked you a question and I need the answer. And actually I'm going to put how are you really at the end of that sentence, because I want to like not be British about this and be polite. I actually want to know what's happened this week that has been your peak and what's been your pit. I do it with the girls at work on a Friday. What's been the peak this week and what's been the pit? Because I think it's just making sure that if somebody is going through something, they know that there is that one person that asks, how are you really like? And actually, do you know what? There's nothing wrong with saying to your friends, listen, you do know on a much deeper level, I'm here for you, whatever. No judgment, whatever it might be. Are you cheating on your boyfriend? Come to me. Are you like, questioning your sexuality? Come to me. Are you questioning your gender? Come to me. I am a safe space.
I love that.
I might just check in on all the people I love.
Yeah. Okay, we're just going to run this quick game. It's called Missing Pieces. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, well,
Missing Pieces, yeah. And don't think about it, just quick fire. I'm really something with my money.
Good.
I learned how to invest my money from something.
Mistakes.
I would never something my money.
Lend.
My last big ticket item was
winter jacket.
If I could do it over, I would something with my money.
Make more.
Yeah, nice.
So good. We just want to say thank you for your time and energy and love and being here to share so much wisdom with us, because it's been an absolute privilege.